Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. If it's your first time, welcome. Today I wanted to share with you all the books that I have read in the month of April. As always, if you haven't subscribed already, I would really appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button and the like button. My stats are actually showing me that most of you watching this aren't actually subscribed, so it'd be really cool to just get that number up. So for the month of April, I read 12 books, 11 of which were fiction, 1 nonfiction that I'll share with you today in case you're interested, and 4 of which were actually by BIPOC authors. So again, about the halfway mark, try to keep my reading more equal in terms of the types of stories and the authors that I'm reading. And before anybody asks, I have absolutely no idea how I managed to get through 12 books. In the month of April. It sounds really surprising. It is actually surprising. But I think it was just a really good month where everything that I was reading was fun. It was easy to get through and it was enjoyable. All right, so first up, this month I read Camilla Knows Best by Farrah Heron. You've already heard me talk a lot about this book, so I won't get into it too much, but this is a South Asian Emma retelling that's set in Toronto, Canada. The author, I believe, is also a Torontonian, so it was really nice to have a Jane Austen retelling that is culturally inclusive and different. I really enjoyed it. It was actually my very first Farrah Heron book, and Emma is just one of my favorite Jane Austens. I'm not really a Pride and Prejudice person, but I really enjoy Emma, so I really had fun reading this retelling. I will be reading some of her other books as well, so you'll hear about those over the next few weeks. The second book that I finished in the month of April is To Have and to Hoax by Martha Waters. Again, you've probably heard me talk about this book, but this is a Regency era romance set in Regency England, so that's early 1800s. This was sort of enemies to lovers, and again, I just love the historical fiction aspect of it. You already know by now that if I'm reading a romance, I prefer for the romance to be a subplot and for the main plot to have a little bit more. Otherwise, the books tend to get, just simply solely romance books tend to get a little bit boring for me. So I enjoyed this. I was really frustrated by the end with the characters, like many other people on Goodreads, but I picked up the second one. It's called To Love and to Loathe, and I'll be reading that one too. After that, I read Tessa Bailey's Secretly Yours. I did a bit of a reading vlog with this and one of the other books I'm going to be talking about, so I'll link it up here for you if you want to check it out. But I didn't love it. I believe I gave it a 3-star. It just the characters felt a little bit too different from each other, and I know you're kind of just supposed to leave aside realism when you're reading romance, but I couldn't with this. But it was still okay. It was still fun. I gave it 3 stars. After that, I read Below Zero by Ali Hazelwood. This is one of her STEMinist novellas. I'm sure you're familiar with some of other books by Ali Hazelwood, but she basically writes romance novels that are focused around women in STEM, so it's science, tech, engineering, medicine. I really enjoy that type of context, and this was a novella, so it's very short. I believe it was 5 or 6 chapters, and I read it in a few hours. It was good, but I think what I realized is I prefer her longer books actually instead of the novellas. I think I heard somebody else talk about this on YouTube, but I wanted more of the story, and I know that's the whole point of novella. It's just supposed to be bite-sized stories, but I think I've learned that novellas, or at least her novellas, are just not for me. So I will not be picking up the other 2, but I will be reading her other books like Love on the Brain, and I believe the new one that's coming out in a couple months, which is Theoretically Yours. And I gave this 3 stars. Up next, the book that took up most of my emotional bandwidth and most of my month is Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. This is this author's very first novel. It is 546 pages, so it was quite big. Again, I also talked about this book in the reading vlog, so check that out if you want more details, but this was an incredible book. This is about crime, family politics, family drama. So it sort of follows like this like well-to-do family who maybe have, you know, their hands dirty in a lot of local crime and whatnot. So it follows them, and it follows a reporter who gets involved with one of the individuals from the family. It was really interesting. Some parts were easier to get through than the others because some parts were just dialogues as opposed to text. So there were a few pages where you're just reading dialogue between two characters, but then there were others that were more of like that traditional storytelling. There is multiple point of views in this, and this is probably a really unique book that I've read. I haven't read too many I haven't read too many crime fictions, but this was incredible. Read the content warnings before you go into this book. It is incredibly triggering. It has all sorts of mature themes and all sorts of mature, potentially disturbing content. So definitely engage with this one mindfully. But if you can stomach that sort of stuff, this was great. I really enjoyed it. This author really knows what she's doing. And I gave this book 5 stars. All right, after this, I read All These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. This is a YA fantasy. I used to read a lot of fantasy a few years ago, and I've fallen out of it since, but I felt like picking up fantasy again, and I've heard a lot about this. I had heard that this reads like ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and it actually does. It didn't, of course, feel as good as ACOTAR. I read ACOTAR like 5 years ago. I enjoyed this. It was fast paced. I gave it 3 stars. I don't know if I'm going to pick up the second part just yet because it is a duology, but I'll see how I feel. All right, after that, I read probably one of my favorite books of 2023 so far, which is Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessica Q. Sutanto. You've probably heard a lot about this author on my channel. I really enjoyed some of her other books, 4 Aunties and a Wedding, and Diary for Aunties and 4 Aunties and a Wedding, and I really enjoyed this. This is a standalone cozy mystery that she came out with, which is essentially about an older Chinese lady living in San Francisco's Chinatown, and she owns a tea shop. And one day, she wakes up in a tea shop and she sees a dead body, and she takes it upon herself to solve this murder. And it was just so fun. I fell in love with Vera. I just haven't read too many books where older women are protagonists, or even just books that include stories of older women. So I really enjoyed this. Is very different for me, and I really enjoy the cozy mystery genre as well. If you're looking for something just fun and endearing, definitely check this out. I gave this a 4 stars. I just had so much fun reading this, and it really made me want to, just like snuggle up with this book and have a nice cup of tea. Even the teas that are described in this just sound heavenly. So it got me really tempted to try out different types of teas. I honestly took my time reading this book, not because I didn't want to read it, but because I did not want it to finish. I was so attached to Vera, and just her personality, so quirky, so, no BS type of older lady, and I had a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to more similar cozy mysteries, just more cozy mysteries by Jessica Q. Sutanto. After that, I read the nonfiction, which is called Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before by Dr. Julie Smith. If you like nonfiction, but you don't like stuff that is very much self-helpy, then you would really like this. It's essentially very basic yet powerful advice on just how to navigate mental health, right? So there's clusters of chapters. There's chapters focused on grief and, what is anxiety and how do you deal with anxiety? And it's just so simple, no jargon, simple, plain English, where you literally feel like you're in session with her. She's a psychologist in England. You really feel like you're in session with her, and she's just telling you things. I thought it was really great to get through. I'm not a big fan of self-help books, especially the mental health ones, because I think they tend to become really jargony, and this really wasn't it. So if you're in the market for something like that, this is really good. Okay, after that, I read The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I had heard a lot about this book forever and ever, but I never picked it up. I believe it was rated Barack Obama's one of his favorite books of the year whenever this came out, and I saw it on sale on Kobo, and I decided to pick it up, and I'm really glad I did. I gave this 4.5 stars. And this is sort of a historical fiction and a contemporary fiction that has like a huge focus obviously on like race, class, and navigating life while being Black in America. So it's set in 1960s and it follows a story of two twin sisters who are from this small town in California, I believe, where it's a small town of Black people, but they are like really light skinned, so they can pass off as Caucasian. And this story is multi-generational, so it follows these two twin sisters as they grow up, and then they part ways. So one of them goes off to live life as a white woman, and the other goes off to live life as a Black woman, and then you follow the stories of their daughters as well. And it is such a cool concept, and I've never read anything like this before, and it was just so intriguing. I just binged this book really, really fast. The author does a really good job of just shedding light on some of the nuances around white privilege versus, discrimination towards Black people, and just seeing those two in contrast. It was just really cool. I think everyone should read this book. I'm not able to articulate exactly how I feel about this book, but it was great. Check it out. After that, I gave into the TikTok hype with this book. This is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I've heard everyone talk about this. It's all over TikTok and Booktube. And the good thing about it is that it's a thriller that is really fast-paced, and so you just kind of get through it really fast. Is it a new plot line? No, I have read a very similar plot line before, and so nothing really surprised me too much about it. It was quite predictable for me, but I can see that someone who hasn't read this plot line before would find it really kind of earth-shattering. So I can see why people rated it so highly, but for me, it just wasn't it. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3-star. And will I be picking up the next one? I don't know, because there's the next one. I believe it's called The Housemaid's Secret, and it follows the same main character. All right, then I read my second Tessa Bailey of the month, which is Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey. What drew me into this was basically just the setting and the context. So this is a rom-com, small town setting, enemies to lovers, but it's two people working on an HGTV show, working on flipping houses. And I really like that context. I haven't read too many books in that setting, so that really drew me to it. But unfortunately, this just did not do it for me. I gave it 2.5 stars. I was not invested in the characters. I like the female protagonist, but not the male protagonist. I'm not the biggest fan of I think cowboy culture, and this really focused on that. So it just didn't it didn't hit a chord with me. So I was kind of disappointed. I had some high hopes. And I don't like this trope of controlling macho manly men. And he definitely was controlling and chauvinistic. And I don't know what it is with romance authors glamorizing and romanticizing chauvinism, but it's not for me. So 2.5 stars. It was still a nice story, I guess, but not what I was expecting. I will be taking a bit of a break, I think, from Tessa Bailey. I've read so many of her books back to back, and I'm hoping that the next one that she's coming out with this year is going to resonate more with me. And the last book that I read in the month of April is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. Again, another book that I have seen everywhere. I have seen everyone talk about it, but I did not pick it up. This was actually gifted to me, the physical copy, and I had an ebook on my Kobo that I got it on sale. And I just gotta say, I don't know why I waited so long to read this. This was incredible. I gave this 5 stars, I believe, and I give 5 stars really, really, really rarely. But this is a historical fiction that's set in late 1700s. So it's set in the 18th century London, and it basically follows this apothecary, this female apothecary, who runs this clandestine business where on the surface she seems to be a traditionally reputable apothecary, but behind the scenes she is sort of this safe haven for a lot of women in London who reach out to her to help her brew poisons for the oppressive men in their lives. And just the context of this was amazing. It was really fast paced. I think it's set over the span of, few days. This book does time travel quite a bit. So half of the book is told from the perspective of the lost apothecary in the 18th century, and then you bounce back and forth between her and the perspective of this aspiring historian who travels to London, and she finds herself just involved and intertwined in this and solving this mystery. I thought it was so good. I read it in 24 hours. I could not put it down. I was reading it on the dining table. I was reading it while brushing my teeth. It was a lot of fun. I've already picked up the second book by Sarah Penner, which is the London Seance Society, and I'm about 25, I think, % through. I'm really enjoying it as well. I just really like her style of storytelling, and again, she's writing about some really unique historical events. Now, this is not based on true events, but she does talk about how in the 18th century, there was a lot of mysterious murders and deaths, I guess, that were happening that were never really like explained, and people used to go to apothecaries for some not so good reasons as well. So it's possible that events of this book, similar events to this book, took place. We just will never know, but it was really great. If you like historical fiction, if you like female protagonists, if you like something that's very atmospheric, this was very atmospheric. This is really great. All right, everyone, that's it. Those were the books that I read in the month of April. Like I said, I have no idea how I managed to read so many, but I think it was a good month. I don't expect I'll be reading this many books in the month of May. I do have a lot planned for this month, but you'll probably see me come back in a few weeks and talk about how I still managed to read 10 books. I don't know. We'll see. If you have any recommendations for me, leave them down below. If you've read any of these books and you want to share your thoughts, let me know. As well as always, if you enjoyed this, don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next one.